Monday on Daily Delivery. Michael Rand here, Patrick Reusse with me as always. Patrick, going to get to the Lynx in a little bit. We could probably talk some NBA Finals too. Game 5 should be interesting tonight. Maybe talk a little golf over the weekend. That was interesting. Rory McIlroy winning in Canada, maybe taking a shot at Greg Norman in the process. But we got to start with the Twins. Patrick, I'm going to read back something. Old tweets exposed. I'm exposing. June 2nd, 2022 at 3:12 p.m. Patrick Reusse, you might know him, tweeted, "Beating the odds, Emilio the Magnificent serves up a 2-run home run to terrible hitting Daz Cameron for a 3-2 loss. Twins storm off to Toronto after losing 4 of 5 to Detroit. When the Rays leave Target Field a week from Sunday, this juggernaut will be under 500. They
exceeded my 0-9 expectation. Let me say that. Yes.
By 5 games. I don't know. I still don't know how they're winning. They're starting pitching. They didn't have basically their top 3 guys from the start of the year, right? If we're saying Ryan, Ober, and Gray.
Yeah, I guess those probably would have been in that order. I don't think we think as much as Ober as we did when the season started. But yes, at the start of the season, I mean, Sonny Gray's really good and Ryan's really good. Those are their 2 only really good starters, and they haven't had them. Now,
Cole Sands
and Ryan managed to miss 2 weeks with COVID. I don't know how the hell that happened. And Sonny Gray's been out twice. He only made his second start. He got hurt his second start, missed 3 weeks, and now he missed again. So yeah, it's but the way they won is they hit.
Yes.
And here's what's amazing. They go to Detroit, they get shut down by that collection, and then they then Barrios just cruises through them, right?
Yeah.
On last Saturday. And then they beat up Gosman. They beat up those 3 Yankee starters. And they beat up Rasmussen, the Tampa guy who'd been pitching really good. The 5 straight really good pitchers. They swung the bat terrific. And he played his B squad on Saturday, and they, Arise hit the home run, and then they hit the grand slam, and they held on to win that game. And then yesterday they faced a 29-year-old guy who's been about 8 different places, and they get shut out. So you got to hope that's not a trend, but they did swing the bats amazingly well for about 5 games there. There's no doubt about it. And they surprised me, and it's a good thing that they did play it as well, because the Guardians are coming, and they're only 3 ahead of them, right?
So, and they're tied in the loss column. I was looking at that. Twins are 35-27. Guardians are 29-27.
I think they've got 9 doubleheaders coming up or something. Cleveland, they've had ungodly, terrible weather and had all these postponements, but. Yeah, I mean, it was a good run. You would have liked to have seen a little more yesterday. I will say that I was at the game Saturday as a fan, sitting with some family members. And when you're there as a fan, you're not staying after the game. I go back to the traditions of the 1960s. I leave early to beat traffic, get out of the ramp. You got to get out of this ramp so you can be there. So I'm driving home, and they're hanging on to this lead 6-5, and they take the terrible Nick Gordon out at shortstop. God, he's terrible at shortstop, and they don't use Correa. They move Polanco. What is wrong with him? What put him out there for an inning? My wife was with me, and I'm swearing at the radio, and she's wondering what I said. The managers, there's sometimes when you'd like to run down and get him in a headlock and say, what the hell are you doing? It's okay to put Buxton in to pinch run, but you can't send your $36 million guy out there to play shortstop in the 9th inning to get your best fielding on the team. Let's put Polanco over there, and then put Arise at second, and get that Miranda, one of the worst first basemen I have ever seen. He's an embarrassment to that position, which has had fat guys playing it for 100 years. Sano is Rafael Palmeiro compared to this stiff. And you end up getting, I think he's the guy that ended up at first base, right?
I'll check. I don't remember.
I knew they moved to Rise to second. He's, he can get a hit. I'll say that. He looked better at the plate, but he is god awful in the field. Bad at third and unusable at first, and they keep using him over there. And anyway, I couldn't believe that he didn't put Correa at shortstop. That was my complaint of the weekend. But hey, 5-4, and the most amazing thing that happened in this 9-game stretch, winning 2 out of 3 in Toronto was pretty good, but knocking all 3 of those Yankee starters out of the game before the end of the 5th inning after I was my column for Tuesday for Wednesday was about the reason the Yankees are good is because they've had these 5 great starters who pitched 53 out of 55 games of the Twins, and they'd had 21 straight games with 5 innings or more. And the Twins knocked all these guys out, and they made, they killed their Garrett Cole. I mean, that was obviously not a good loss, but it's incredible what they did to Garrett Cole. So that was the way they played against the Yankees was pretty impressive. And it's baseball too. It's you lose 4 out of 5 in Detroit, and then I was as negative as anybody, obviously predicting 0-9, and then you play great. Now who knows? You go to Seattle. Seattle's been struggling, but they've been playing a little better lately, and now you get shut out by a mediocre pitcher. Maybe the bats are going to go cold again. You never know.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Rise is fun, isn't he? Man,
no, he's great. Coming off of what you just said, probably wasn't the time for me to bring up the next subject within the subject, which was, does Rocco deserve a certain measure of credit for getting this team to 35-27 at this point? Just because the way he manages the bullpen sometimes, the way he manages injuries and off days will drive you absolutely nuts sometimes. But are there buttons he's pushing that do things that we don't appreciate in some way? Because he's got 2 division titles in 3 years. He's got him in first place this year, even though the pitching staff's been decimated. They've had key position players out. What do you think about that? Is this because of him in a certain way, or do you feel like this is in spite of him because of the way he manages things?
Oh, he frustrates me, but I don't think he's calling the shots on, I think he's calling the shots on Correa, okay, about, deciding to give him a rest. I don't think that's coming from upstairs, but I think the Buxton plan for rest is coming from someone, don't you? Yes. I mean, there's some stuff that's illogical. You playing them in both games of a doubleheader, and then you don't play them the next day. I don't understand that, and a lot of stuff that I'm accused of being a crusty old baseball guy, but I'm a crusty old baseball guy because my theory is if you're healthy enough to play, but because that's the way it's always been, take a day off here and there. But he gets, I don't know, it's baseball managers always get a lot of heat by the old style baseball fans who want to bunt, and stuff like that. But I think he's okay. I think he's a pop. If 5 is, a 5 on a scale of 10 is, just ordinary, mediocre, not good, not bad. I think he's a little above that. I think he's a 6 or 7. I would say he's an asset. I don't think he's, he won the manager of the year the first year, which was, all those manager of the year votes is whichever team wins 15 more games than they're supposed to, the guy turns out to be the manager of the year.
Right.
That doesn't have anything to do whether he can manage or not. But I don't I don't get down on him strategically. I get down on him for player usage, and if it's the old idea of why didn't he do this, why didn't he do that. I don't really get on him that much. I don't see a lot of bad stuff. And by the way, they have boardroom meetings to decide whether they're going to use a pinch hitter or something. There's about 9 guys down there in the South. This isn't Tom Kelly standing there making 100% of the decisions, or even Gardy, basically. So, I think Rocco's a asset to a degree. Yeah, to a degree, but he is over. I think the front office has a lot to do with it, but he's also overprotected because of his own injury history. I think, don't you?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I struggle with how much of this is modern baseball, how much of this is just information overload and just, knowing what we know about player usage, how much players, how much money is tied up in contracts now and how they're afraid to expose certain assets, or however you want to phrase it, by risking whatever risk management, losing them for long periods of time if they don't give them this rest. But yeah, I think there's something, whatever his approach is, and I feel like it's more of a laid back approach. He doesn't really rip guys. We've talked about that. Whatever it is, he seems like players like playing for him, and when you like playing for somebody, you probably play pretty well. You're probably pretty relaxed. I mean, they don't have massive swings up and down. They did a little bit last year, but some of that was probably beyond their control. So yeah, it's just interesting. I think he gets probably more heat than he deserves to sometimes, just because the way he handles people that bothers people, and rightfully so. But there's probably something to it, and I think you're right. There's probably something about it that's beyond his control too.
Yeah, Doc Rock, I call him.
Doc Rock, yes.
Doc Rock. I mean, he does drive me crazy. Griffin Jacks, right? He comes out of the Air Force Academy, so he had to do some physical training, right? I mean, they had him run some laps, do some stuff. He's you got to think. I know it's flying, so it's not he's not like running onto the beach with a gun or something, but he dives when that idiot Miranda doesn't go after the ground ball the other day. Jax goes over there and dives and tries to make a play and throw to Miranda, who's standing there next to him with his head, in the cloud, some damn place. But he lands a little bit on his shoulder. Doc and the trainer come running out there, and Jack's like, he kind of winces a little bit. A wince doesn't mean you have to come charging out of the dugout for a guy who went to a service academy. I said, he couldn't have gazed at him with more concern if he was a surgeon telling a patient, that didn't go quite as well as we thought it was going to,
Right.
That kind of stuff. That make them wave for you. Then the one time they didn't run out there was when Royce Lewis killed himself running into the center field fence. I got to get into that. Okay.
Yeah, let's get it.
Okay. I thought they'd go 0-9. They went 5-4. I was wrong about that. I wasn't wrong about Royce Lewis. I was on. This is not a second guess. My first guess when they sent him to St. Paul was play him at shortstop, maybe some third base. The most important thing with him is to be ready to be your opening day shortstop in 2023, while everybody else was whining and thought he was a superstar, and we don't know. But
right.
You didn't need him. You had Urshela playing third. You had Correa playing shortstop, and keep him the hell out of the outfield. And because he had played some there, but not a lot. Right. And he basically admitted to us really a nice kid, by the way. He basically admitted to us Friday night that he didn't know what the hell he was doing when he ran back there and tried to catch that ball. He jumped 5 feet before he got to the fence, and then he kind of bounced off the fence and crashed. I think he ruined the knee when he crashed into the ground, or maybe even when he took some steps there. But we can talk all this. Well, how could have you predicted this would happen? Blah, blah, blah. It doesn't make any difference. There's a lot of things that have happened in the world that were unpredictable. But the reason he is not going to play for the next 12 months is because he was playing center field. That's why. He was not have been hurt if he was playing somewhere else. Okay. Right. In that injury, he was playing center field. And by the way, I pointed this out, 3 innings, you have now given him 7 months of service time.
Yeah.
People don't think this is all injury time coming up now. He was in the big leagues, 4 more months of service time, then 3 months of service time. People were wondering if the reason he wasn't called up earlier was service time. He's getting all that service time now because you guys called him up, and for no reason, when you played him in center field for 3 innings and he ruined his knee. And who knows if he'll be as good a player after a second surgery as he was that we saw for 11 games earlier in May. So whatever, they can tell me no regrets. You think they really have no regrets that this guy is eating up, 1 full year of his time towards free agency, not playing because you put him in center field?
I know. And if they if they just left him alone, he would have played shortstop the next day because because Correa went on the COVID list. But
yes,
people got mad at me. I tweeted the other day, "You tore your ACL twice?" ? How'd that happen? Well, the first time I slipped on the ice during a freak storm in Texas. Yes. And the second time I crashed into the outfield wall after Twitter demanded I play all the positions.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. Well,
I don't know. It's a little bit of a freak injury, but you're right. It's only freak in that you wouldn't expect it to happen. But if you don't know what you're doing out there, like he said, you are prone to weird things happening.
I watched it and said, when I watched it, but first time I said, it looked like he was uncertain to me when he was running backwards. Then I watched it again on video about 8 times, and I said, maybe he knew what he was doing. I didn't really pick up on because of the angle they were showing us. I didn't pick up on the idea that he jumped early, but he basically said Friday night, I wanted to play. I'm a ball player. I'm not just a shortstop. And then he basically said, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So yeah. I haven't played much outfield. So it was, and I guarantee, supposedly they could have braced it up and have him tried to play, which would have been ridiculous. But Scott Boras, I'm sure had a whole lot to do with get your surgery and get yourself healthy. And, that's the Twins problem that, you're not going to be ready to go by opening day next year. So.
No, and it's service time. It counts all the same. So that's like you said, that's another factor there. Well, you said they go to Seattle, are rising 359 still, even after an 0 for yesterday. Correa hitting over 300 now too, by the way, after
he's really been good. He's a hell of a player, boy. He's really player. I always thought he was a good player, but you don't get to, you get to see him 6, 8, 10 times a year. You saw him in some, postseason too, but boy, he's a good player. What else? You know who else loves him? Thomas J. Kelly.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it was when I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago. He said that he loves the shortstop. So that's why I thought he might play him in the 9th inning yesterday.
Saturday, yeah. And you were right. It was Miranda at first base in that scenario. I looked it up. So the infield was Urshela, Polanco, Arise, and Miranda. They got through it. I think Pagan threw 21 pitches to 3 batters in that outing. I think he got a couple called 3-2 strikeouts, but he got it. He got through. I think Pagan has a lower ERA now than Taylor Rogers, by the way, some way, because Rogers had a couple shaky outings lately.
Yeah, he does. I'll still take the other guy, but
I think so too.
But Pagan's been better than those. One reason his ERA is okay is both those games where he ended up having that ended up, he got the 3-2 call, the bases loaded after he led the
Right.
two, his 36 and 28 pitch saves.
Right.
So, yeah, he's a tightrope walk, but, he does have a good arm. So, maybe I overreacted a little to him, but he drove me nuts because he wouldn't throw it over when, he waited till 3-2 to have a strike and then pray that the umpire give him the pitch. So
He did walk the tightrope a lot this year.
But you know what? It's fun to be able to talk to him because by this time last year we weren't talking about him.
No.
They were all great.
Well, yeah, with this, they started like 14 and 28 last year, and that was pretty much it. That was curtains for them. Speaking of curtains for them, Lynx, Patrick, wow, 3-11, lost to Indiana, the other probably really bad team in the WNBA this year. We're not used to talking about the Lynx like that, but my goodness, you lost at home to Indiana. Cheryl Reeve, mad at the refs, didn't come out and talk afterwards, sent poor Katie Smith out to explain what happened. She's the assistant coach for the Lynx. Missing a ton of their best players in that game. Obviously, McBride was out. Obviously, still no Nafisa Collier. And then whatever they started the year with the plan with Angel McCautry, they cut her forever ago. I mean, it's just, this is turning into a nightmare year. And I'm not saying they can't get a little bit better. Fowles is out now too. With, that's, her farewell tour has been cut short. We don't know when she's coming back. So that, everything that could go wrong this year seems like it has, and some of it is just bad luck, and some of it's just I don't know if the plan was great this year.
Yeah, the signings the early signings at McCautry and was another one, and neither of them are playing right. And I don't know, why did they get rid of a couple of guards too? I mean, what Dangerfield do to get in the doghouse here? Why did they get rid of her?
I think they didn't think she could. The style they wanted to play, they didn't think she could do it. And I don't know if she's with anybody right now.
What style is it that they want to play?
They're not playing Lynx basketball. They're not playing Lynx basketball, Patrick.
I watched most of the fourth quarter, and that was Cheryl was more interested in screaming at the officials than trying to draw something up in the last 30 seconds there. She spent her whole time complaining, and she is, you try to sell women's basketball. You're still selling it, right? You're still selling it, and you're always complaining that they don't get enough pub and blah, blah, blah. And then you spend all your time telling them how rotten the officiating is and trying to illegitimize the results of the games. And I don't know. That would have been a real classy performance if the women's Olympic team had lost to Lithuania or something and had her storming around the court like a moron, like she was after yesterday's game. Very low class by her yesterday, the way she behaved at the end of the game, and then to not come out and do a media session because she was pouting about the officials is Bush League at the highest magnitude. And this would make sense if they were tanking for Paige Beckers, but Paige is not going to be leaving after her junior year. Well, not when she's making more money in UConn than she could in the WNBA. So they just stink. That's their basic problem. They're no good. Now if they get Collier back, I don't know, 8 out of the 12 make it, right? So
yes.
12 there, it's not hopeless, but this is not what they expected, that's for sure.
Well, we're just not used to it either. What they made the playoffs like 11 years in a row, even when we kind of they somehow kind of threaded the needle, when they had that last year that Maya Moore played, and it wasn't great, right? They went something close to 500 that year.
Oh yeah, they did make the playoffs, but that team was not good, right?
No, it was like they feel like they were like a game or two over 500, and then they lost right away.
Lindsay was that Lindsay's last year too?
I think it was Lindsay's last year too.
Yeah, Lindsay was, she was not in shape and was not ready. And that was a mediocre team. But the stat I continue to cite is, Cheryl won 42 playoff games with LeBron. my amor, and has won since. So we'll one before and one none before and one since. So we'll see.
That's a good point. Hey, you wrote about St. Louis Park baseball. Maybe we can talk about that for a little bit before we get into some NBA final stuff. That was interesting.
Well, by coincidence, like the first nice afternoon we had after that god awful spring, in early May, I was home with nothing to do. I looked in the paper I looked somewhere to find out if there were any high school games around. And I saw St. Louis Park was playing Wayzata at 4:00 over here, not far from where I live. And St. Louis Park has both of them have Gopher recruits. Hokanson, the St. Louis Park kid, left-handed pitcher and left-handed hitter and center fielder and really good. And then the catcher from Wayzata is a Gopher recruit too. I can't remember what his name was. So I said, I'll go over and watch 5 or 6 innings. So I went over. So the one high school baseball game I'd watched this year was St. Louis Park. And then they end up going to the tournament, and lo and behold, Hagstrom calls me and says they haven't been there in 70 years.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Park. So back when they went in '52, it was the old 8 regionals, one class, and it was only the baseball tournament had only started in '47. That surprised me. And then when I started looking into that, Halstead, which is a town of about 500 north of Moorhead up there, won it that year. So that was fun. But then the St. Louis Park coach is a neat guy, and he's been one of these. He was there as an assistant, and then he became the head coach. And But the last 10 years, they've really pushed baseball there, and, gotten a little league and the traveling league and the parents all on the same page. And their baseball has been a little better. They've been in the sectional final 4 times in 6 years. And last year they went into the sectional final, and Hopkins beat them twice. And Hopkins beat them. Hopkins beat them bad. I guess they got to the sectional final, and then Hopkins beat them up. And they won the second game against Hopkins Monday and won the tournament. But it's it's funny about baseball. Baseball is still thriving in a lot of places for players, but every coach tells me the same thing. I went up and did a piece on Bob Carter, who's been at St. Cloud Cathedral for 50 years, a year ago. And they all tell me the same thing. Kids love to play baseball. They don't watch it.
Yeah. Which is, yeah.
I mean, if some of their buddies are going to a game, Twins game, right? But they don't sit out and watch the ball games. They don't. If somebody makes a play, they'll watch it on video 50 times, but they don't, it's not like, I would imagine that most of them could tell you Louis Arise, but they couldn't tell you the Twins lineup or something. They don't watch the game, but they still enjoy playing it. And they had the other key there, Mike, is St. Louis Park. There's 17 of their players play more than one sport.
Yeah.
Several of them play 3. And it's kind of, I always like that old time ethic, because I think those are better athletes. Those are the non-specialists. Means, John Gallardi won a lot of football games, and he always said every town's got the kid who plays quarterback in football, point guard in basketball, and shortstop in baseball. And that's the guy I want. and he says, and was the homecoming king. He says that's the kid he wants. And, I think you have some of those kids on this St. Louis Park team, and it's not all specialists. And St. Louis Park is kind of a funky little first tier suburb too. That's like a lot of modest homes and a lot of people who've lived in that place for 50, 60 years. So it's a good story. I enjoyed doing it.
I think some of the conventional wisdom is coming around back to the playing more than one sport too. I think there was like that kind of that specialization idea got a lot of run 10, 20 years ago. I think some of the science, though, even people love to listen to facts more than they like to listen to people who have done it before. Some of the science is trying to tell us now that you benefit from it. You just there's proof now that it's it's good for whether it's socializing, whether it's getting different functioning with your athletics, whatever it is, it helps you in your primary sport, whatever your primary sport winds up being. So at a certain point, you have to decide sometimes like what's going to be the sport. You might focus on a sport if that becomes your best sport and you think you might play it in college, but there's definitely the wisdom, the science is coming around to the idea of play more than one sport. You'll avoid the overuse injuries. You'll avoid all those other things and stuff like that.
You won't get stale either. This Giovanelli, Stefano Giovanelli, he's a junior, is a great athlete, very good wide receiver in football and good basketball player. And I've talked to him about it. He said, I wouldn't have it any other way. He said, he loves football. But he said, I love playing them all. He said, because you play with different games, just what you said, you're playing with different people to some degree, or you're doing different things. You don't get stale. You don't say, oh my God, I got to go to another football practice this summer or something like that. So yeah, I think it's I think it's plus, we've had generations of, Joe Mauer did not have to become a baseball specialist to have a pretty good career.
No,
there's the example everybody sees. Best quarterback in the country, the best high school baseball player in the country as a catcher. And oh, by the way, probably one of the top 10 basketball players in Minnesota that year too, as a 6'4" point guard. So there's nothing wrong with being an all-around athlete. I think the hardest one is to break away the hockey players that
right.
Get in, because there's so much summer hockey now and stuff like that it's they always used to play Legion ball, and I think Legion ball loses a whole lot of kids to other summer activities. But baseball still got the numbers are okay, so it's good.
How about Rory winning in Canada and saying my 21st tour victory, one more than somebody else? So I think that was the quote. And he was taking a shot at Greg Norman, who has 20. It was the weekend of the debut of that other tour, and PGA getting a little frontal with their takedown of it. It's interesting.
But all of a sudden, you read the paper. If I'm a guy, I read that the Charles Schwartzel takes home $4.75 million. $4 million for winning it, and then he was in on some team goofy thing they have going. The crowd was not good over there, and they got no pub really. I mean, they got some pub, but they weren't on TV, right?
They're not. They everything's streamed.
Some special streaming thing. Where do you go to? I have streaming. Where do you go to get it? I wouldn't have known where to watch it. It wasn't on YouTube TV. I know that. So I mean, I didn't want to watch it, but you know what? They're gonna. We talked about this last week, but the thing that this is really going to hurt is like the 3M Open and tournaments, because you look at the 48 guys that played in this tournament, 20 of them might have been at Blaine, 20, not all of the prominent ones, but that secondary group that's playing there, the Charles Schwartzels of the world, you might have had them out here and you're not going to have them. So it's going to be an interesting battle. I'm surprised that a guy like Dustin just hurting his legacy like that, as far as I guess the four majors are the only ones that they worry about now, and they can they can play in all of them, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a PGA championship is not run by the PGA Tour. You won't play in the players anymore, but you can play in the four majors. So I guess some of them just decided they'd rather not play as much and win more money. So I don't know, but I'm not. you're watching the thing in Canada, and I watched the end of it. The crowd was just absolutely nuts and rabid up, and they're all. They gave me a stat watching the game, watching that yesterday.
Yeah,
there are 2 million Irish in Ontario.
really?
I mean, there was we talk about all the Irish who came to New York in 1800s, the potato famine and stuff. Well, the others went to Canada apparently, because I mean, there were guys out there in shamrocks and the whole deal watching Rory yesterday. But yeah, it is going to be interesting to when those guys this week, right? This week, U.S. Open.
Yeah,
and they're going to end up playing with each other, right? I mean, they're going to the same groups, and it'll be interesting to say the least. I wonder if the USGA is going to. Yeah, they don't want to get sued, so they're not going to take sides, I guess. But they, it's gonna be. It is. I can't remember. This is what the craziest thing that's happened in sports since the AFL, probably.
The USFL, maybe. Yeah.
No, this is bigger than the USFL.
Rival league, yeah.
Yeah, it really is because the amount of money they're paying. But anyway, it's Rory's. I'm glad to see Rory win. I've always been for some reason I'm a fan of his. I guess because he's a skinny guy who can hit at 330. I don't know. I've never. It tells you that it isn't all muscle when you hit a ball. His big problem is he can't putt. He's not a great putter, but he can when he's playing good. When he's hitting it straight, he's something. So
yeah, he was great in that fight. Everybody was taking dead aim at the flags on Sunday. I was watching a little bit of it, man. They were every time I looked up, they were knocking it within 3 feet. He was the best of that bunch. Quick before we go, Game 5 NBA Finals tonight. Man, Curry was something else in Game 4, kind of bringing that team back from the brink. 43 points, and Wiggins had like 16 rebounds in that game. Yeah. Curry, I think, had a double too. I think he had 10 rebounds in that game. I don't think either of these teams is great. I think they're both kind of flawed. It's kind of a weird finals because you're kind of used to seeing a couple teams with 60 wins doing battle. These guys are 53, 51 wins. It's such an even distribution of wins this year. So it's just been a hard one to figure, but man, Golden State getting that home court back. I thought Boston was the better team, and they kind of blew it in that Game 4.
I heard Barrero yesterday morning. I was in the car when he was doing his Sunday morning show, and he was talking about how Khan sat him down once to explain to him, that got him to come over and talk to him, and he wanted to explain to him what an extraordinary player Johnny Flynn was, and that we not. And Dan said, it's old news and it's blah, blah, blah. And it's been, we've talked about it 100 times, but he says, when you watch Curry play that game, it all comes rushing back. that Johnny Flynn, who ended up having a pretty good run in Australia, ended up, that you took him, and him and Rubio instead of Stephen Curry. And then, he wouldn't have played there anyway. Well, he would have played there at least 5 years. So
right.
Would have given him, he wasn't going to go play in Dubai or something. He wasn't going to go play in the Dubai League. So
they would have just messed up his ankles anyway. It's like, would have been fun to find out.
Yeah. Would have been poor Johnny Flynn.
Yeah.
Let's face it. I blame that Syracuse team for going 6 overtimes.
Yeah.
Johnny into a hero otherwise. But yeah, Steph is, I've always been a guy who loved the shooter, right? I don't love the 3-point game, but back in the day, I loved the shooter. The guy that knows when it's in, when he lets it go, he's going the other way. Nobody's better at that than Steph. He had one in that late net game where he was covered.
Oh, yeah.
He was leaping at him, and he shot it. He's starting to run back down the court. He knows it's in from like 26 feet with an arm. Whoosh. Yeah, he's an incredible. Well, you know what he's really added to his game is rebounds and assists, but rebounds. He gets 8-10 rebounds a game. But I think it's been a good final, even though this was the first close game, right? The first real close game. But you're right. It's an interesting matchup and Burrow pointed this out too. He had that 43-point game against the best defense in the NBA.
Yeah.
Guard the hell out of you. So,
and without much help either. I mean, this is not a great Warriors team. They're getting dragged there by Steph by and large.
Draymond looks old a lot of times. I mean, he's feisty and he likes to raise it. He's old and beat up from beating on those teams all those years. So I still kind of like the Celtics to win it, but it was fun to watch that. I saw most of it. So anyway.
Well, we'll see what happens tonight. Should be a good game. Game 5 in a 2-2 series. Doesn't get much better than that. Patrick, good stuff. Let's do this again next week. All right.
All right, Michael. See ya. Goodbye.